Funny story. A couple weeks ago, Comcast announces that they're making a streaming set-top box, and for whatever reason, Roku's stocks started plummeting, which I thought was ridiculous because Roku is so much more than just a streaming set-top box. And this product right here is proof. Look, if you watch this channel, you know I'm a big fan of Roku. Not just their streaming set-top boxes, but also their implementation in TVs like TCLs and Hisense. Roku recently produced a pair of standalone speakers that only worked with Roku TVs. This is the new Roku Soundbar, and if you want it, the new Roku Subwoofer. Subwoofer will work with the soundbar or with the new Roku speakers. But the key here is Roku Sound, along with a Roku streaming platform built right in. Makes a lot of sense if you own a smart TV that ain't so smart, and of course most of them don't sound so great either. So you can already tell this is a pretty compact soundbar. It's not particularly wide, and it's certainly not too high. I think it's going to fit in front of most TVs without blocking the screen really well. You can see here also that it has a matte black finish that doesn't give a rat's ass about my fingerprints. And you know what? It's fairly hefty. I mean, for its size, it's got some good weight to it, which is usually encouraging when you talk about audio devices. And then behind the screen here, you can't see them, but there are 4 2.5-inch drivers in there. And Roku told me that they didn't want to muscle the sound with DSP. It's supposed to have a more acoustic design. More on that in a minute. Here's the back of the soundbar. Not a lot to see here, and that's kind of the point. Couple of 1/4-20 threaded inserts here for wall mounting. And then in the recessed bay here, we've got a USB slot. We've got optical input, HDMI input/output. There's a reset button, and then over to the side here is the power cable port. What you don't see here are any buttons, and that's because you don't really need them. You've got the remote control for volume. There's no input switch that you need, and any audio controls are going to be through Roku's on-screen interface. And here is the Roku Subwoofer, sold separately. That way you can pair it with either the soundbar or the Roku speakers as mentioned. I like everything about this. I like the look. I like the little vents on the side and the front here. I like that it's built solidly. That is way better than you get with most soundbars or home theater in a box systems. And if we take a peek down at the bottom, what we have here is a 10-inch driver that's paper along with a foam surround, and it's driven by a 250 peak, that's a 125 watt RMS amplifier. Now, a quick note before we move on to setting this up and evaluating. This is the full-fledged version of the Roku soundbar and subwoofer that you'll find most places. Walmart has a very specialized version. It's called the ONN period Roku soundbar and subwoofer. I don't get the naming convention, but the point is they're $50 less each, and they also have less power and no voice remote. So the soundbar here at Walmart with the on period version is going to have 40 watts as opposed to 60 watts of amplification. In the subwoofer, you give up 150 watts of amplification, even though you keep the 10-inch driver in there, which has me a little bit concerned about overall sound quality. And then again, the remote control doesn't have any voice control features. Best way to connect this soundbar is via HDMI. No surprise there. Check the back of your TV. You want to find your HDMI ARC port. It'll say ARC in parentheses right below it. Connect to that particular port on your TV, and then the other side goes in the back of the soundbar. When you do that, you can control the TV's power and volume with the Roku remote, which I find super handy. Now, if you have an older TV and you're finding that's not working for you, check to make sure HDMI CEC is turned on in the menu. It's buried in there somewhere, trust me. Now, if you don't have ARC on your TV, because maybe it's a little bit of an older TV, you can use optical, but you give up those control features and you give up a little in the terms of sound quality. Otherwise, it's about the same. Now, for pairing the subwoofer, that's also extremely easy. Just plug the subwoofer in, you'll see a little white light blinking on the back. Then you dig into the Roku menu, pair a device, you'll see subwoofer is an option. Just select it, and then Roku will go through the process of pairing the subwoofer. Now, a word of advice here. Don't walk out of the room while it does that, because then it's gonna put out a test sound through the subwoofer that is extremely loud and very annoying. It's going to bother your workmates if you're setting it up at work like I did. But once that's done, it also plays sort of a demo reel, and that's also pretty loud. So you want to be around to get through all that stuff. And once it's done, you're off to the races. So let me talk a little bit about the sound control for this, because there are some useful tools in here, although less than I was really expecting. So if we go into sound settings, you've got several different sound modes. There's normal, there's reduce bass, which naturally turns down the subwoofer a little bit, unless you don't have a subwoofer, in which case it just turns down the bass in the soundbar. Then there's bass off, turns off the subwoofer entirely, and bass boost, which boosts the bass as you would expect. There's also speech clarity mode, which you can employ at either a low or a high level. This is going to presumably make the dialogue stand out more clearly from the rest of the sound. We'll talk about how well it does that later. And then there's volume mode, two options here. Leveling sort of levels out the highs and the lows and makes a very flat sound, reduces the overall volume and keeps like commercials from exploding at you. And then the night mode is more of a dynamic range compressor, which keeps explosions from waking up your loved ones when you're watching late at night. Now let's talk about performance. First, as a Roku streaming device, I think it's outstanding. It's every bit as good as the Roku 4K streaming stick, and actually it moves like the Roku Ultra in terms of how fast it is. So if you think of it that way, between $50 and $99, you're getting a Roku streamer around that amount and just tacking on a little bit extra for a soundbar. That's pretty stellar. Now, how about sound quality? I mean, after all, that's what this thing is for. On its own, the Roku soundbar has enough bass to, round out the sound, but it's certainly not going to move you. I wish there were some more granular audio controls, because I'd probably brighten up the treble just a little bit to get some more sparkle and zing out of it. The dialogue clarity feature does work well for pushing out the vocals when you're watching a movie or a TV show, though it's completely useless for music. And as for the overall soundstage, well, it doesn't have a whole lot. The soundbar on its own tends to sound like it's coming from the soundbar. It doesn't really reach out into the room widely like I'd like it to. Now, part of this may be because Roku has not used a bunch of DSP, that's digital signal processing, to muscle the speaker into doing things that it doesn't want to do naturally. They took a very acoustic approach to this, and so it does sound natural, but it's not particularly zingy or sparkly or engaging. That all changes though when you add the subwoofer. The subwoofer adds a ton of punch and rumble to this system, and it also makes the whole thing sound much bigger. The soundstage doesn't get much bigger from the soundbar, but with that extra bass presence going throughout the room, it does have, well, let's just say this, it matches up better with what you're expecting to hear when you watch a big blockbuster on the screen. Now, how about music? There I am significantly less impressed. I don't think this is a particularly great music listening situation. I mean, with the soundbar, it'll certainly, become the life of a party. It gets loud enough to do that. But if you're looking for really good quality sound, I actually think the Roku standalone speakers sound a lot better. And for music, there are other soundbars out there that just flat out sound higher fidelity. Should you buy a Roku soundbar? Well, I think if you're going to get a Roku device anyway, and your TV needs improved audio, absolutely. I mean, a Roku device is going to cost 40 or 50 bucks at least anyway. Tack on an extra 120 or so for the soundbar, and yeah, I'd say that's a pretty stinking great deal. It's definitely going to be way better than what your TV offers on its own, unless of course it happens to have Roku built right in. Without the subwoofer though, there's not a lot of punch, so don't expect a huge bombastic presence in your room. To get that, you're gonna have to spend another 180 bucks, making the total package about $360. So where does that put it relative to other soundbars out there? Well, I'd say from a sound quality perspective, it's not the most flashy, but then again, it's got Roku built right in, and it's super convenient. So I'd say, yeah, if this sounds like the kind of product that you might want, you should definitely give it a shot. And hey, if it doesn't suit your needs from a sound quality perspective, you can always send it back. But I think you'll be surprised at what this combo can do. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. What do you think of the whole Roku and soundbar combo? Are you interested? Leave me a comment down below. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. While you're here, check out my Roku Ultra streaming box review. And of course, visit digitaltrends.com for the latest tech news and reviews.